Kaiana is remembered as one of the most internationally renowned Hawaiian chiefs of the late 18th century, and he stands as one of the most tragic and complex figures of Polynesian history, with his name forever being linked with the catastrophic Battle of Nuʻuanu that would forever change the destiny of the Hawaiian Islands. But how exactly did this fearsome war chief and powerful warrior meet his brutal end? And to answer this question, we will be examining 4 popular theories from contemporary Polynesian and European sources which highlight the final moments of Kaiana's life. But before we begin, don't forget, if you want to find out more about the deaths of some of history's greatest figures, then subscribe to my channel, Historical Exit. As was previously mentioned, Kaiana was one of the most powerful, experienced, and internationally famous military commanders in Polynesian history, and he would be at the peak of his authority in the early 1790s when he would successfully serve as one of Kamehameha's principal war chiefs. Utilizing his knowledge of Western firearms and naval tactics acquired during his remarkable journeys abroad, where he visited a range of countries like China, the Philippines, and the northwest coast of America. With this unprecedented international experience behind him and his reputation as Hawaii's first globe-trotting chief, Kaiana had become a formidable military innovator who could adapt European warfare techniques alongside traditional Hawaiian combat. However though, by early 1795, Kaiana's strategic position would begin to deteriorate as he was pointedly excluded from Kamehameha's war council during preparations for the invasion of Oahu, forcing the proud chief to fear for his life and question his standing within Kamehameha's inner circle. With his political security undermined and his military expertise seemingly undervalued, Kaiana would make the fateful decision to defect to Kalanukupale's forces with approximately 300 of his personal warriors. Kalanukupale was Kamehameha's last major obstacle to uniting Hawaii, making Kaiana's defection to join with him a decision that would have critical consequences for Kaiana and his followers, as both armies would take up battle positions in Nuʻuanu Valley on that fateful day in May 1795. With Kamehameha's invasion force of up to 16,000 warriors confronting the significantly smaller but desperate defending army of Oahu led by Kalanukupale and Kaiana. And during the early hours of the Battle of Nuʻuanu, once the engagement commenced, Kaiana would realize that Kamehameha's forces were far more formidable than the defenders could have anticipated, with Western trained artillery directed by John Young repeatedly bombarding the Oahu positions while musket-armed warriors advanced in coordinated formations. Kaiana would position himself amongst the front ranks of Kalanukupale's army, and multiple Hawaiian sources record that the battle raged with unprecedented violence as both sides employed European weapons alongside traditional spears and clubs. But Kamehameha had prepared a devastating strategy utilizing superior numbers and concentrated firepower designed to overwhelm the defending positions, and when Kaiana's warriors attempted to hold their ground against this massive invasion force, they found themselves facing impossible odds. Understanding that the Oahu forces were beginning to crumble, Kamehameha's artillery intensified their bombardment throughout the engagement, but Kaiana and his loyal warriors fought with unmatched determination, sustaining their defensive efforts even as casualties mounted catastrophically. And during the climactic moments of the Battle of Nuʻuanu, it is stated that Kaiana was killed when the Oahu forces were systematically overwhelmed by Kamehameha's superior firepower. But the circumstances and manner of his death remains controversial and emotionally charged even to this day, with Hawaiian chroniclers and European observers providing dramatically different accounts of his final moments. Our arguably most reliable contemporary account of Kaiana's death comes to us from Captain William Broughton, who visited the Hawaiian Islands in early 1796, so just months after the Battle of Nuʻuanu had concluded. And this British naval source provides crucial statistical details that make clear the devastating scale of the engagement, recording that 300 of Kaiana's personal warriors died alongside their chief and that Kamehameha's forces suffered approximately 6,000 casualties out of their 16,000 man army. Additionally, Broughton's account also heavily emphasizes the role of European military technology in deciding the battle's outcome. Although he provides limited detail about Kaiana's specific manner of death, with him simply stating that one well-directed shot from John Young's cannon brought death to the restless and ambitious Kaiana. So although Captain Broughton's account may be our most nearest to the event and probable discourse on how Kaiana may have met his end, but the most detailed and emotionally resonant account of Kaiana's passing comes to us from Hawaiian historian Stephen Dishaw in his historical text Kamehameha and His Warriors, written 100 years after the Battle of Nuʻuanu. And in this historical document, Dishaw preserves eyewitness oral histories of Kamehameha's reign as it was orally passed down through the generations. And this Hawaiian source provides a graphic description which emphasizes Kaiana's extraordinary courage and determination in his final moments, describing the events as follows. Kaiana was struck 3 times in the breast with bullets. However, he was not killed immediately. He was using his gun with the great desire to approach close to Kamehameha so as to be able to shoot him. There were perhaps only a few fathoms between the two sides. When Kaiana received his wounds, he increased his attempts to move forward. He ran amongst Kamehameha's warrior women and seized Kuhimana's gun. The account continues with devastating detail where it states, while he was loading a bullet into that gun which he had snatched, he was shot by Kalino, one of Kamehameha's accomplished marksmen. This bullet struck his left thigh and he fell down, suffering a great loss of blood from his wounds which weakened him. So definitely a very vivid and brutal traditional description of the events that would occur during Kaiana's final moments, which highlight that Kaiana sustained multiple musket wounds while desperately attempting to reach Kamehameha himself, reinforcing that Kaiana's death was more prolonged and heroic than the simple artillery strikes suggested by European sources. But perhaps the most heartbreaking element of Kaiana's death comes from the Hawaiian accounts describing the presence of his wife, Kekapu'i, on the battlefield, fighting for Kamehameha's forces against her own husband. Deshaw's traditional accounts provides further information on this event, and he states, amongst those who were casting death on Kalanukupule's warriors was Kekapu'i, who had learned her skill in shooting from her husband in times past. Yet here was Kekapu'i employing the knowledge which she had learned from her husband against him. The tragic irony culminates in Kaiana's final moments with this poignant description by Desha, and he states his wife Kekapu'i saw him fall and she left her place and ran without hindrance to the place where her husband lay. She sat by his head and lifted it upon her lap, and tears of love for her husband fell. Kaiana gazed with eyes of suffering upon his wife, but was unable to speak, and gazing at his warrior wife who had fought against him, with his head resting on her lap, he drew his final breath. This deeply emotional Hawaiian perspective transforms Kaiana's death from a simple military casualty into a profound tragedy of divided loyalties and personal sacrifice. So although these accounts from Hawaiian traditional sources provide probably our most emotionally complete and culturally significant explanations as to how Kaiana was killed by Kamehameha's forces, they are however not the only theories presented by various chroniclers. Multiple conflicting versions exist regarding the exact manner of Kaiana's death. But based on the primary and nearest to the event sources we have available to us, it is most plausible to assume that Kaiana, the defiant Hawaiian chief, perished from multiple wounds suffered in close combat rather than a single artillery strike. And it would appear that the various dead theories reflect both the confusion of battle and the different cultural lenses through which Hawaiian and European observers interpreted these events. So the true circumstances of Kaiana's death remain as complex and multifaceted as the remarkable chief himself. A man who had bridged 2 worlds and ultimately died caught between competing loyalties in one of Hawaii's most decisive military engagements. So let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do like and share it with others. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel Historical Exit so you can find out more about the deaths of some of history's greatest figures. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.